All right. Yeah. So Unit 1, Lesson 19, the longest unit ever is in language arts, I think. And we are dealing with interpreting figurative language. So you might hear the phrase, that's a figure of speech. That's also what we're looking at today will be those kind of figures of speech. And well, I should have more on my screen here. Let's see if I can refresh. Oh, that's why it's going to log me out. Oh, lovely. What's going on here? Okay. Is it an update? Please come back. There we go. Don't need any technical issues. We've had enough technical issues here. I'm going to exit and reopen, see if that helps. Do any of you have that type of problem where it takes a while for things to pop up on your screen?
No.
No, just me. I figured. Okay. No, just you. Okay. And for some reason it'll, yeah. Okay. So here's what it's supposed to look like. I don't know why it takes so long. Sometimes I think it's the animation. I think sometimes that messes
Oh
that.
yeah, because this mine is moving.
Okay. So so what we're looking at today will be metaphors, similes, analogies, hyperboles, personification, and onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia. All right, so you can take a guess what that is. Well, we're going to find out here in a second, and it's kind of fun. So, onomatopoeia. Okay, let's take a look at her. And there's our little Edgar Allan Poe cartoon. I'm pretty sure that's who that's supposed to be. All right, so here is our audio.
Authors use figurative language, such as metaphors, similes, and analogies, to create vivid word pictures and memorable images. A metaphor compares two unlike elements. The baby's face was a rose. A simile makes this comparison by using words such as like, as, or similar to. The burned cake was like a brick.
Your daddy's calling.
A more general term for a comparison that finds a similarity or parallel between two unlike elements. Metaphors and similes are specific types of analogies. Other types of figurative language include hyperbole or extreme exaggeration, and personification, giving human qualities to animals or inanimate objects. Words such as boom and splash reflect the sounds they describe. They are examples of another type of figurative language, onomatopoeia.
Onomatopoeia. Yeah, so different types of figurative language. It can be used in nonfiction and in fiction writing. So, you know, a metaphor is a thing that kind of compares two unlike elements. A simile is like a metaphor, and the only real difference there is that it includes words, the words like, as, or similar, right? So, you know, we use these a lot in speech, and they're fairly commonplace. So, you know, like here, a simile would be the burned cake was like a brick. And it just throws in that extra element there to sort of discern between the two. Analogies, you'll catch me using analogies a lot, just comparing things, you know, giving additional examples in that type of situation. Hyperbole. A lot of politicians speak in hyperbolic terms in today's world, you know, really exaggerating, you know, the effects of something or, you know, the dangers of something and things like that. I use hyperbole a lot when I talk to my child. I tease her a lot, and I'll tell her that, you know, she needs to clean her room or I'm going to throw her off her balcony. It's a third floor, by the way, so that would not feel good. That's just I've used that for like the last year. Ever since we've lived here, it's like if you don't clean the litter box. I'm going to throw you off the balcony. I'm going to put you through that wall. I'm going to throw you off the balcony. And of course, I'm not going to do that, but that's type of exaggeration. Personification, right? Giving human qualities to an animal or an inanimate object. These things, we encounter them so much that we don't really even think about their definition so much, but they all have, particular meaning. And then onomatopoeia. So, that one's fun. I always think about comic books, right? If you see a comic book or a graphic novel, they'll have a word, across a panel in like all caps with exclamation points like boom, pow, bang. All those are types of onomatopoeia because they sound like the word that you're using, right? Zip, a cat's meow, a dog barks, right? Because it sounds like the action it's representing. That's onomatopoeia. So new word for all of us. Onomatopoeia is that situation. So bang, pow, zip, meow, bark. Those are all forms of onomatopoeia words. Okay, so our first text here, we're dealing with an aging writer. So from the Middle Years by Henry James in 1893. And it says, the tears filled his mild eyes. Something precious had passed away. This was the pang that had been sharpest during the last few years, the sense of ebbing time, a shrinking opportunity. And now he felt not so much that his last chance was going as that it was gone indeed. He had done all that he should ever do, and yet he had done what he wanted. This was the laceration that practically his career was over. It was as violent as a rough hand at his throat. He rose from his seat nervously, like a creature hunted by a dread. Then he fell back in his weakness and nervously opened his book. It was a single volume. He preferred single volumes and aimed at a rare compression. He began to read, and little by little in this occupation, he was pacified and reassured. Everything came back to him, but came back with a wonder, came back, above all, with a high and magnificent beauty. He read his own prose, he turned his own leaves, and had, as he sat there with the spring sunshine on the page, an emotion peculiar and intense. His career was over, no doubt, but it was over after all with that. So we're talking about an aging writer here, and he's kind of lost, he's worried that, sort of he's at the end of his career, sort of a crisis, existential crisis, I guess you could say. So underlined at the top here in our A text box, it says a simile describes the way the aging writer feels about the end of his career. The narrator says it was as violent as a rough hand at his throat. So that word as, right, signals that simile. And laceration, right? That's another kind of figurative. This was the laceration, like a wound, is what it's saying there, that his career was over, that it was wounding him. And then underneath here in our second one, it says the author uses analogy in saying that the writer turned his own leaves. So the literal meaning is that the writer turned the pages, right? Leaves, cut, we could, that's sort of an old school word for turning pages in a book, leafing through, a book, things like that. The literal meaning is that the writer turned the pages, but figuratively, right, these words suggest changing seasons and the writer's age. So turning the leaves are like turning the seasons. So that's the type of analogy. Other analogies, like I said, I use analogies a lot, just sort of as examples, comparing a situation to another situation, things like that is another type of analogy. Okay, so let's take a look at our quiz. Over here, Unit 1, Lesson 19. I don't think Unit 1's ever going to end. And we have our same passage here by Henry James. Our tip, it says, be careful not to confuse straightforward comparisons with figurative language. If an author says Angela looks like her sister, The author is comparing two similar elements, and it's not using figurative language, right? That's straightforward. Ellen, or I'm sorry, what was her name? Angela. Angela looks like her sister. Straightforward. That's not figurative. If we said Angela looks like a hamster, right, that would be a type of figurative language. That would be a simile, because that's not a straightforward comparison. That's comparing two different things. So question one, Christiana, you want to read question one for us?
Okay, question one. The narrator says this was the last this was that word.
Laceration.
Okay, the narrator says this was the laceration. That particularly his career was over. Which statement best explains the metaphor? Which statement best explains this metaphor? A, it compares the end of the writer's career with a serious soul truth. B, it compares the probable end of the writer's career with a life-threatening wound. C, it please, what's that word?
Exaggerates.
Okay, yes. See, it exaggerates the seriousness of the writer's ending career by comparing it with death. D, it describes the writer's feeling by using human qualities to explain the end of his career. D.
Did you say B?
D.
It's B. B is a boy. So yeah, so laceration, right, is a cut or a gash. For some reason, a lot of people get in car wrecks, they run up with like lacerated, or you tumble, you fall, you get a lacerated spleen or kidney. But it's usually, it's depicting a cut, a pretty severe one. That's usually how you describe a laceration. So here, what it's saying is, that it's comparing it to the end of the writer's career with a life-threatening wound. It really hurts him, right? This is something that he's dealing with. It's like I said, it's like an existential crisis. You come to, am I at the end of, life events? This is one of those things that we come to a moment in time, where things are changing, or one part of our life is ending, another one's beginning, things like that. And it strikes you. So kind of comparing it to a physical wound is what's happening here. It's kind of pain that he's feeling about his life. So B is boy for number one. Oh, terror. Oh, more Edgar Allan Poe, The Telltale Heart. So Edda, you want to take like the first two paragraphs for us, please?
Okay. His room was as black as pitch tar, with the thick darkness, for the shutters were closed, fastened through fear of robbers, and so I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing it on steadily. I had my head in and was about to open the lantern when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening, and the old man sprang up in bed, crying out, "Who's there?"
And I'll say, I kept quite still and said nothing for a whole hour. I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime, I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in the bed listening, just as I have done night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall. Grace, you want to take the last paragraph there, or paragraph 4 and 5?
Okay. Presently, I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. It was not a groan of pain or of grief. Oh no, it was the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, When all the world slept, it was welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo. The terrors that distracted me. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt and pitied him. Although I chuckled at heart, I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise, when he had turned in the bed. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself, "It is nothing but the wind in the chimney. It is only a mouse crossing the floor. Oh, or it is merely a cricket which has made a single chip." Yes, he had been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he had found all in vain, because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow before him and enveloped the victim. And it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he neither saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room. There came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury, as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage.
All
From the
right.
Telltale Hearts.
So we encountered part of Telltale Heart before, right? This is another section. We heard about the character before, shining the light on that one, creepy eye of the old man. And here's more detail about, one of the nights in particular where he was doing this. So Tracy, could you read question 2 for us?
Yes, the narrator states in paragraph 3 that he did not move a muscle. This phrase is an example of hyperbole because it A. Compare the narrator's muscle with motion. B. It's impossible to remain alive without moving muscles. C. Give human qualities to moving muscles. D. Exaggerates the narrator's fear of the dark room. Compare human. D.
B as in boy. Yeah. It's just not possible not to move at all, or move a muscle. Even if you're completely still, you're going to have to breathe. Your diaphragm's a muscle, your heart's a muscle. So it's a softer type of hyperbole, right? It's not really exaggerated, but still yet, the fact that you cannot not move any muscles, and that is in a sense, it is definitely hyperbole, or blinking even. You're not going to sit there for an hour with your eyes completely open, because that's going to be real. Well, I mean, this guy might be able to because he's crazy, but the rest of us can't. So again, our Edgar Allan Poe passage here. So Sasha Gay, could you read number 3 for us?
Okay. In paragraph 4, the old man tries to explain the noise in the room as merely a cricket which has made a single chirp. How would substituting the word noise for the phrase a single chirp affect the sentence? A, the cricket would not be personified because its song would not be described. B, the vague word noise would be less vivid and specific both for readers and the old man. C, the old man would not be convinced that the sound came from a cricket. D, readers could not share the old man's terror by not knowing the precise sound of a cricket. Is it B?
Yeah, B is in boy, vague, where noise would be less vivid. So, and also a little bit confusing, right? I mean, again, a chirp is an example of onomatopoeia, right? It's the sound that the cricket is making. It's chirping. It makes a chirp-like sound. And otherwise, if it's just if it said merely a cricket which has made a single noise, well, that could be anything, right? We could actually just hear it kind of moving across the ground or something like that, not necessarily a chirp, which is a very specific sound. So that's giving it more specificity, more detail. And that's all about good writing. So let's see, Christiana, would you take number 4 for us?
Number
Yeah, number 4.
Number 4, okay. In paragraph 4, death is specified as A victim of the narrator's spirit. B, a black shadow outside the window. C, a sneaker in the old man's room. D, an envelope on the old man's bed. B.
So it's C. And the thing to remember about personified, right? Personification is giving human-like qualities to something, whether it's an inanimate object or an animal. You're giving it human details. And if you look through here, the only human-like thing is a stalker, right? A stalker being someone that's preying on somebody. Stalking, more generally could just be, what a predator, but any type of predator, whether it's like, an animal like a bird or a cat or something will stalk its prey. But a stalker also, could be a human. And the other choices here are not human qualities, right? The victim's narrator's fury, fury isn't necessarily human. A shadow is not human. An envelope is not human, but a stalker can be human. That could be a human quality. So C, number 4 there. All right. And number 5, Etta, would you like to read number 5 for us?
The simile in paragraph 5, comparing a watch wrapped in cotton with the sound of the old man's heart, emphasizes the A, narrator's anger with the old man, B, late night setting of the story, C, steady rhythm of the heart, or D, similarity between heartbeats and drums. Is it C?
Yep, steady rhythm, right? We think of a ticking watch as a steady beat. Having it wrapped means it's going to have a little bit of a duller sound, so it's going to be more of a thud, and it's going to sound a little more like a heart rhythm. And of course, this plays into what we also read about the telltale heart, right? Because at the end, he hears the heart beating under the floorboards where he had buried the old man. So it's kind of foreshadowing that event as well. The ticking of that heart that's come up again later on in the short story. So 5 is C as in cat. 6, and our last one for the quiz here. Grace, would you like to read 6 for us?
Sure. Figurative language builds suspense in this passage by A, describing darkness, fear, death, and rage. B, for foreshadowing events that lead to death. C, personify abstract feelings of terror. And D, setting the story in a dark room on a dark night. Is it A or C?
A? Yeah, it's A. So, we have a little bit of all of this in there, personifying, we're personifying death, not fear. And this is kind of foreshadowing the other stuff here, but generally all of that is encompassed, right? The darkness, the fear, death, and rage. These are all, we find figurative language that deals with all of that. And really, that's really a characteristic of Edgar Allan Poe, more generally speaking, right? He was a very dark type of writer, sort of like one of the early horror writers. A lot of horror writers will cite him as an influence. So yeah, that is the quiz. So A for number 6. 1 was B as in boy. 2 also B as in boy. 3 as well was B as in boy. 4 was cat. 4 was cat. 4 was C as in cat. 5 was C as in cat. 6 was A. So now we're getting a handle on figurative language, and some good examples here, especially with Poe, because he was a master of figurative language. So let's take a look at the workbook there. Okay. And again, what he says here is authors use figurative language when they compare one thing with something very different in order to explain an idea or create a particular effect. Generally speaking, that is figurative language, or using a figure of speech. You're comparing one thing with something very different in order to explain. Similes make comparisons using keywords such as like or as. So the difference between a metaphor and a simile. Similes use like or as. There's going to be a word in there in the middle that separates it. Metaphors make that same type of comparison, but they don't use like or as. It's the only real difference between the two. Analogies, kind of like similes and metaphors, but are longer, extended metaphors, right? So they're more of like a little story that you tell. And then, like we said, hyperbole is extreme exaggeration. Like I said, that's something that see often in nonfiction. We see, editorials, politicians and stuff like that are prone to use hyperbole. Personification gives human qualities to an animal, or an inanimate object or an element of nature. So something that is not human, you're giving it some type of human qualities to it. And then onomatopoeia uses words that create sounds like they describe: wish, buzz, all that kind of stuff. Meow, bark, neigh. Those are all kind of examples of onomatopoeia. And a new passage here, Denham's illness. And this was from The Middle Years by Henry James, 1893. And we have the April day was soft and bright, and poor Denham, happy in the conceit of reasserted strength, stood in the garden. The sociable country postman passing through the garden had just given him a small parcel, which he took out with him, leaving the hotel to the right and creeping to a bench he had already haunted, a safe recess in the cliff. It looked to the south, to the tinted walls of the island, and was protected behind the sloping shoulder of the down. He was tired enough when he reached it, and for a moment was disappointed. He was better, of course, but better, after all, than what? He should never again, as at one or two great moments of the past, be better than himself. The infinite of life was gone, and what remained of the dose, a small glass scored like a thermometer by the apothecary. He sat and stared at the sea, which appeared all surface and twinkle, far shallower than the spirit of a man. It was the abyss of human illusion that was the real, the tideless deep. So under our first underlined sections here, in this description, objects are given human qualities. it looked to the south. Talking about the creeping to a bench, he had already haunted a safe recess. It looked to the south. Benches don't look, right? Or facing south. It's just positioned where it is. But looking specifically is a human, activity. And then sloping shoulder of the down. So it doesn't have this is talking about a physical location. So a shoulder would be a human quality as well. Right. So benches look to the south. Hill has a sloping shoulder. And then second, here at the end, it says the abyss of human illusion is a metaphor, meaning that the speaker's ability to fool himself is as great as the ocean's depth. So it was the abyss of human illusion that was the tideless deep. So yeah, an abyss being like a pit, basically. Right. And just want to point out, again, we're dealing with a very old passage from 1893. So always some words that might seem, strange. So apothecary is one. That is a kind of a predecessor to a modern pharmacist. An apothecary would be, like the guy that worked at the drugstore at this time, and he would mix drugs, make drugs and sell them. So sort of like a pharmacist, more like a lot like a modern day pharmacist without all the modern medicine. All right, that's what he's talking about there. Is like a small dose scored like a thermometer. All right, so let's start our workbook. And let's see here. So again, we have the same passage. Our content topics. So figurative language is not limited to fiction. So I've mentioned here, right? Much nonfiction writing contains similes, metaphors, and analogies to explain information, to describe places, or simply to make the writing more enjoyable. So, nonfiction writing are going to use it, in certain situations to help explain things. There's a lot of good nonfiction writers out there that'll use figurative language. And our first question, Tracy, could you please read our question number 1?
Yes, the narrator compares the company's remaining life to the dose of a small glass spot like a thermometer by the apothecary to A, indicate the brief time that then Combi has left to live. B, reassure then Combi that his medicine works. C, show that the sea is shallower than it appears to be. D, prove that the thermometer then can be used is accurate. A?
Yeah, A. Very good. Yeah, so this is kind of like, stuff that just doesn't exist anymore, right? Which kind of makes it hard to kind of for us to get the full effect, if we don't really understand the figurative language because it's so old. So we talk about scored like a thermometer, right? If you think about an old school mercury thermometer, the scoring is going to be the little ticks that you see used, for measuring the temperature. So that's all the little tick marks along the temperatures. And then the dose of a small glass. So he's like, has like a little bit of life left, and it's at the bottom scored like that, like a thermometer. So those little marks are like really, 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 really close together. All right, so A for number 1. And 2, Sasha Gay, could you read 2 for us?
Yes. The comparison of the spirit of the man with the sea means that A, Dencombe has vast and deep thoughts about life. B, the human spirit is of depth greater than the depth of the ocean. Then C, Denku's ability to fool himself is shallower than the ocean. And D, the human spirit is shallow and superficial. B.
Yeah, B is in boy, right? Yeah, B. Anytime you hear something compared to the ocean or the sea, it's usually making a comparison of deep and vast, right? That's usually what you'll encounter when somebody says something like the sea or like the ocean or the stars in the sky, vast or deep or many, stuff like that. Okay, and let's see here. I'm going to read our little passage here from Ray Bradbury. From There Will Come Soft Rains. So this one's kind of neat. In the living room, the voice clock sang tick-tock, 7 o'clock, time to get up, 7 o'clock. As if it were afraid that nobody would, the morning house lay empty. The clock ticked on, repeating and repeating its sounds into the emptiness. 7-9, breakfast time, 7-9. In the kitchen, the breakfast stove gave a hissing sigh and ejected from its warm interior 8 pieces of perfectly brown toast, 8 eggs, sunny side up, 16 slices of bacon, 2 coffees, and 2 cool glasses of milk. Ray Bradbury is a very, very famous science fiction writer. And we're going to see, right, this sounds like a sort of a modern, like, house, right? This is a house that's making breakfast. It's funny because you look at old science fiction that's about the future, and sometimes they get things right. So you hear like there's like a voice clock, right? So that would be just like a voice assistant that we have today, like Alexa or Siri or something like that. And then we have a breakfast stove that's making breakfast for everybody. So those aren't around yet, right? So we don't see that very often, but we do have, stuff that's going to talk to us, tell us what time it is and things like that. So that's from 1950. So what is the effect of the statement that the clock sang as if it were afraid? So we're personifying it, right? We're giving it human qualities. This example of personification gives the clock the ability to do what? Sing, yeah. And the human emotion of
Fear.
There you go. Yeah. So it's singing and it has a human emotion of fear. In the living room, the voice clock sang tick-tock. All right. So sing and fear for number 3. And so here's the second passage from the same work from Ray Bradbury. Christiana, you want to read? Let's say you do the first 2 paragraphs.
The first 2 bless you. Today is August 4th, 2026, said a second voice from the kitchen ceiling in the city of Alabama. What is that name?
Allendale, California.
It's repeated the date 3 times for the memory's sake. Today is Mr. Featherstone's birthday. Today is the anniversary of Selena's marriage. Insurance is payable as are the water, gas, and light bills. Somewhere in the world, delay Clicked memory chips gliding under electric eyes.
Edda, you want to take the next two?
Okay. 8-1 TikTok 8-1 1 o'clock. Off to school, off to work, run 8-1. But no doors slammed, no carpets took the soft tread of rubber heels. It was raining outside. The weather box on the front door sang quietly, rain, go away. Rubbers, raincoats for today. And the rain tapped on the empty house, echoing. Outside, the garage chimed and lifted its door to reveal the waiting car. After a long wait, the doors swung down again.
All right. Grace, you want to take the last two?
Okay.
At 8:30, the eggs were shriveled and the toast was like stone. An aluminium weight scraped them into a sink, where hot water welled them down a metal throat, which digested and flushed them away to the distant sea. The dirty dishes were dropped into a hot washer and emerged twinkling dry. 9:15 sank the clock. Time to clean.
Yeah, so from There Will Come Soft Rains, Ray Bradbury. So I always get a kick, reading old sci-fi and stuff that talks about the future, right? So by the year 2026, we should expect to have stoves that cook our breakfast for us. Right. So it's funny though, right? Because we do have things to talk to us all the time, our phones, like I said, stuff like personal assistants. So he did nail that, right? But we're still waiting for our stoves to cook foods. So it's funny too. Memory tapes glided under electric eyes. So this is before the integrated circuit and digital recording. So like old computer stuff used like analog tapes. So this was all kind of working behind the scenes by like tape machines and stuff like that, not just like digital like we have today. So Tracy, you want to read question 4 for us?
Yes. How would the meaning of the sentence change if it read, the stove was hot, instead of the toast was like stone? The change would A. Define the stove with greater accuracy. B. Make the stove seem less hard and more edible. C. Show that toast and stone are not similar elements. D. Explain why the stove was put into the scene. C.
So B.
B.
Yeah, makes the toast seem less hard. If it's hard toast, maybe you'll give hard toast a try. If it's stone like toast, you might pass
You
on
already
that.
know it's hard.
Yeah, exactly. It's just one of those things, and of course, right, it's not similar at all, but it's that comparison, that simile, that, and just like the cricket chirping, right, it gives a more specific idea. The reader has something to kind of latch onto. So the toast was hard. Yeah, I mean, it's effective, but the toast was like stone is much more descriptive and something that you're probably going to pass on. Let's see. Okay, yeah, same passage. Sasha Gay, could you read question 5 for us?
Yes. Which description is most like the house in the passage? A computer program that schedules repairs. B, a mechanic who checks a car's computer. C, a car that drives itself. D, a remote control device. C.
A lot of automation, right? There's a lot of things happening on its own, just like a car driving itself. So C, yeah, C is in cat, car that drives itself. Of course, we do have some self-driving cars today. Still, jury's out on how soon before we're all going to be driving them. They get into some trouble every once in a while. But yeah, so it is. This house is kind of like that, right? Everything's kind of happening without its. And we don't know where the people is. Now I got to go back. I got to find the story somewhere because I got to know, where is everybody? So I have to see if I can find the story somewhere. Okay, and new passage. This is from Little Women by Louisa Alcott, 1868. Tracy, could you read this first 3 paragraphs for us?
Yes. Next wedding day. You do look just like our own dear Meg. Only so very sweet and lovely that I should hug you if it couldn't crumble your dress, cried Amy, surveying her with delight when all was done. Then I am satisfied, but please hug and kiss me, everyone, and don't mind my dress. I want a great many crumble of this shock bird into it today. And Meg opened her arms to her sister, who clung about her, feeling that the new love had not changed the old. Now I am going to tie John's cravats for him, and then to stay a few minutes with Father quietly in the study, and Meg ran down to perform these little ceremonies, and then to follow her mother wherever she went, conscious that in spite of the smiles on the motherly face, there was a secret sorrow, hate, and the motherly hurt at the flight of the first bird from the nest.
All right. Let's see, Sasha Gay, could you read that first paragraph for us for Joe's life at Plumfield?
It never was a fashionable school, but it was just what Joe intended it to be, a happy, home-like place for boys who needed teaching, care, and kindness. Every room in the big house was soon full. She had boys enough now, and did not tire them. Did not tire of them, though they were not angels by any means, and some of them caused trouble and anxiety. But her faith in the good spot which exists in the heart gave her patience, skill, and in time success. For no mortal boy could hold out long with the professor shining on him and as benevolently as the sun, and Joe forgiving him 70 times 7. Very precious to Joe was the friendship of the lads.
Grace, you want to finish the last paragraph for us?
Okay. Yes, Jo was a very happy woman there. In spite of hard work, much anxiety, and a perpetual racket, she enjoyed it heartedly and found the applause of her boys more satisfying than any praise of the world. For now, she told no stories except to her flock of enthusiastic believers and admirers. As the years went on, 2 little lads of her own came to increase her happiness. Rob, named for Grandpa, and Teddy, a happy-go-lucky baby, who seemed to have inherited his papa's sunshiny temper as well as his mother's lively spirit. How they ever grew up alive in that whirlpool of boys was a mystery to their grandma and aunts, but they flourished like dandelions in spring. From Little Woman, Louisa.
All right. And Etta, you want to read question 6 for us?
Meg's statement, I want a great many crumples of this sort put into it today, means that Meg, A, does not care whether her dress gets wrinkled, B, cares more about love than about a wrinkled dress, C, is concerned because she looks different in her wedding dress, or D, would rather stay with her sisters than get married. A.
B. So the only difference really is, let's see here. Oh, so either way, she doesn't really care about the crumpling of the dress. But what's important is that because it says you do look just like our own dear Meg, only so very sweet and lovely that I should hug you if it wouldn't crumple your dress. So she's not worried about getting her dress crumpled. She wants people to hug her. So it's showing her that she's more concerned about the love than the wrinkles in the dress. So B is in boy for number 6. All right, number 7, Christiana, could you read number 7 for us?
Number 7. The compression in paragraph 3 indicates that Mag's mother A smiled but sincerely disapproved of the man Mag will marry. B, fear that Mag will not attend to the birds in the garden. C, worries about the family finance after Mag marries. D, shows joy mixed with sorrow because her first child was leaving. A is leaving. D.
Yeah, D is in dog. Shows joy mixed with sorrow because her child, and that's a typical parent, right? There's a mix of emotions on a wedding day. You're gonna be a little sad because your child's growing up, but you're also gonna be happy for him. So that's definitely a good example there. So D is a dog for 7. And let's see, 8. Sasha Gay, you want to read number 8 for us?
Okay. In paragraph 4, the narrator says, no mortal boy could hold out long with the professor shining on him and as benevolently as the sun, and Joe forgiving him 70 times 7. Which statement best explains the hyperbole? A, the professor and Joe treat the boys with a great deal of kindness and patience. B, troubled boys do well at Plumfield because of its strict behavior standards and academic focus. C, Plumfield emphasizes permissiveness and show little attention to academic standards. D, the professor is providing little academic training and Joe is losing his patience. Is it B?
It's A. Professor and Joe treat the boys with a great deal of kindness. One tip off is benevolently. So while back I was talking about, root words and prefixes and stuff. So Benny, if you ever see that in front of a word, it means good. That it's a Greek. I think it's Greek. Any like mal, M-A-L, mal is always bad. Malevolent is bad. Benevolent is good. So he's treating him with kindness and patience there. So A for number 8. Okay, and Meg's wedding day again. Let's see here. Etta, you want to take number 8 for it? Or no, I'm sorry, is this number 9? Yeah.
What does the metaphor whirlpool of boys suggest? A group of boys at the beach. B, boys studying the movement of water. C, the constant motion and activity. Or D, the movement of a top or spinning toy. C,
Yeah, that explains boys pretty well, doesn't it?
definitely.
I used to, before we had our daughter way back when, and I think just being a man, you want a little boy, and we would get around her family, my wife's stepbrother and her brother and some cousins. They all had little boys that were for about 4 or 5 years old up to like 11 or 12, and they would get together. And after about an hour, I was like, no, I don't want a boy. I don't want a boy. They were just a whirlpool of boys. So that is just so fitting for, Eddie, you get 2 or 3 boys that are about the same age or, in that grade school range together, and they are going to destroy everything. And loud. Oh, geez. So yeah, that's my take on boys. So number 10, let's see, Tracy, could you read number 10 for us?
The comparison of the poised flourishes like dandelions in spring shows that boys are growing fast and constantly. B, help keep the lawns under control. C, enjoy playing outdoors in the spring. D, refer wildflowers to cultivate the garden. C?
So A.
A?
Yeah, 10 is A. Dandelions will sprout up real quick, right? Even if you just mow your lawn, you come back in the evening and you'll have dandelions there. So that comparison, boys growing quick, especially at that age. So A for number 10. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and read this one. We've got more Edgar Allan Poe. This is from The Pit and the Pendulum. So what we're seeing here is that the narrator, the person that's basically telling the story, has been sentenced to death by the judges of the Inquisition. So this is taking place during the Spanish Inquisition. I was sick unto death with that long agony. And when they at length unbound me and I was permitted to sit, I felt that my senses were leaving me. The sentence, the dread sentence of death, was the last of distinct accentuation which reached my ears. After that, the sound of the inquisitorial voices seemed merged in one dreamy, indeterminate hum. It conveyed to my soul the idea of revolution, perhaps from its association with the burr of a mill wheel. This only for a brief period, for presently I heard no more. Yet for a while I saw, but with how terrible an exaggeration. I saw the lips of the black-robed judges. They appeared to me whiter than the sheet of paper upon which I traced these words. I saw them fashion the syllables of my name, and I shuddered because no sound succeeded. I saw, too, for a few moments of delirious horror, the soft and nearly imperceptible waving of the sable draperies which enwrapped the walls of the apartment. And then my vision fell upon the 7 tall candles upon the table. At first they wore the aspect of charity and seemed white and slender angels who would save me. But then, all at once, there came a most deadly nausea over my spirit. and I felt every fiber in my frame thrill as if I had touched the wire of a battery, while the angel forms became meaningless specters with heads of flame, and I saw that from them there would be no help. And then there stole on my fancy, like a rich musical note, the thought of what sweet rest there must be in the grave. The thought came gently and stealthily, and it seemed long before it attained full appreciation. But just as my spirit came at length properly to feel and entertain it, the figures of the judges vanished, as if magically, from before me. The tall candles sank into nothingness. Their flame went out utterly. The blackness of darkness supervened. All sensations appeared swallowed up in a mad rushing descent, as of the soul into Hades. Then silence and stillness, night for the universe. I had swooned. He had fainted. So From the Pit and the Pendulum, Edgar Allan Poe in 1842. So number 11, the onomatopoeic words hum and burr near the beginning of the passage help reveal that the narrator is A, suffers from ringing in his ears, B, hears voices as musical notes, C, cannot distinguish individual sounds, or D, is held captive in a mill.
Is it B?
It is C, cannot distinguish individual sounds. So 11 is C as in cat. Yeah, so just to pop back up there, the real operative word there is indeterminate. So after that, the sound of the inquisitorial voices seemed merged in one dreamy, indeterminate hum. So he can't just, you know how you zone out and, somebody could be talking to you and you just hear, like a humming, or a lot of people and you can't really make out voices. That's kind of what he's experiencing there. And 12, let's see, Grace, could you read 12 for us?
Okay. Which feeling does the narrator's comparison of the candles with charitable angels most likely represent? A, warmth, B, regret, C, hope, and D, fear. Hope.
Yeah.
C?
There you go. C is hope. Number 12. Okay. And 13, Grace, you want to take 13 for us?
Okay, great. Okay. When the narrator says that he felt very fiber in his frame drill, as if he had touched the wire of a battery, what does he most likely mean? A, his dread is causing him physical discomfort. B, he is excited to be alive. C, the judges have sentenced him to be electrocuted. And then D, his captors have finally unbound him. Is it C or D?
It's A.
A.
Yeah, so it's just, we've all kind of experienced anxiety or nervousness that it manifests itself into physical, pain. So that's what he's experiencing here. A really sharp one, it would seem, like if he's going to touch the wire of a battery. That's going to give you quite the pain for sure. Edda, you want to take 14 for us?
Okay. The thought of death entering the narrator's mind like a rich musical note emphasizes that death seems something the narrator most likely would A, fight August, B, welcome with pleasure, C, find difficult to understand, or D, consider a creative act. B?
Yeah, right. Anything, musical like that. The way it's described, rich musical note, that's something that's pleasant. So he's going to welcome it. Yes, B as in boy for 14. And our last one here, 15. Christiana, 15 for us.
Okay, 15. As the narrator loses consciousness, he compares his fainting spell with a soul's descend into heads, hearts,
Hades.
okay, heads, on the basis of other details in the passage. Which sentence best describes the effect of his compression? A, it confirms that the narrator deserved to be condemned. B, it emphasized the narrator's hopeless situation. C, it foretell the narrator's fairy death. D, it suggests that the please, the word is, please, what's that word?
Which one?
The last one, the D, it suggests that the
Inquisition.
Inquisition. Yeah.
Okay, Inquisition just are demons. Is it C or D?
It's B. It just emphasizing his hopelessness. Hades, it's like hell, descending into hell. So that's really emphasizing his situation there. And Inquisition is basically a investigation. It's a very formal and like the Spanish Inquisition, where they're rooting out heretics. And it's sort of sometimes can be like a witch hunt. It's not always like using the most sound judgment. So that's what Inquisition is. 15 is B as a boy. All right. So any questions? Anybody miss any answers? We need to review any of the questions there.
Please, number 3. I missed number 3.
3 was the fill in the blank. It was sing for the first blank and fear for the other one.
Just say sing. Oh, okay, sing.
Yeah, sing and fear.
Okay.
Any others? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and stop our recording here. So there's a lot of types of figurative language. There's other ones to discuss, but these are probably the most